Hey, everybody, welcome to Friday Night Live here at our group, Becoming Bulletproof. I just want to welcome you and hope that you've had a good week. It is the end of another week, the beginning of another month, and a lot to be grateful for. So let's get into it. Gratitude isn't about feeling lucky, it's about forcing your brain to surrender its victimhood. Let me say that again. If you want to stop playing the victim, stop wanting to feel grateful and start weaponizing gratitude as a daily action. Okay, the moment you treat gratitude like a skill, like lifting weights or learning a language, you break this cycle of self-pity that keeps you stuck. Most people are waiting around for positivity to just magically appear in their lives. They think that when things get better, I'm going to feel grateful. That's weakness. Pure and simple. Building gratitude through disciplined practice, even when life is kicking your ass, that is bulletproof. Okay, we've been sold this fairy tale that gratitude is this warm, fuzzy feeling that descends on us while we're sipping tea or watching sunsets and feeling all happy go lucky. But real gratitude, the kind that changes your life, is more like a medicine that tastes terrible but heals you anyway. And it's not always comfortable. Sometimes it feels like a lie, but it's the daily practice of redirecting your neural pathways away from victim and the thinking that comes from feeling like the victim and toward resourcefulness that makes it so powerful. Because let's be honest, most of us would rather be right than happy. Think about it. We'd rather clutch our grievances close to our chest, protecting them like precious jewels rather than surrender them for something better that seems unknown. There's a perverse comfort in victimhood, but that comfort's killing you physically and mentally and psychologically, even spiritually. And today, I'm going to show you why. So thanks again so much for joining Friday Night Live here inside the Bulletproof group, Becoming Bulletproof, where we're making sense of your messiest transitions and turning them into your greatest transformations. I'm Thomas. I'm your host. I'm a certified high performance coach. I'm a former actor, a writer, a twice divorced dad of daughters, and I'm just trying to figure out how to love this life better every single day. So today's life training might ruffle a few feathers, as you've already gathered, because we're going to talk about one of the most misunderstood concepts in personal development, and that's gratitude. Not the Hallmark card version, but the scientific powerhouse that can literally rewire your brain circuitry away from victimhood and toward resilience. So if you're in that 35 to 55 age bracket where life has thrown you some serious curveballs like divorce or career upheaval, empty nest syndrome, health issues, and you feel stuck in the aftermath, this episode is specifically designed for you because I've been there and I've got the emotional scars and the brain scans to prove it. Okay. Maybe not the brain scans, but wouldn't that be cool, right? Gratitude isn't about feeling lucky. It's about forcing your brain to surrender its victimhood. Let me explain what I mean by this because it's not just motivational fluff. It's really neurological fact. Think about the last time life blindsided you, no matter what it was. Your brain defaults to two protective modes. Okay. Fight or flight, which is anger and blame, or shutdown, which is sadness, helplessness. Okay. Your brain's alarm system goes off. Okay. Doing exactly what it evolved to do, protect you by either fighting back or playing dead. That's the way it's designed to work. This worked great when threats were tigers and bears, but when the threat is emotional, it's betrayal, it's loss, it's failure, these same protective mechanisms keep you stuck instead of moving forward. Neuroscience shows that stewing in victim mentality actually shrinks your prefrontal cortex. Think about that for a minute. The area responsible for rational decision making, and it turbocharges your brain's fear center. Dr. Andrew Huberman at Stanford University has demonstrated in his lab that when you remain in a victim state, your body stays flooded with stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. Okay. These accelerate inflammation and they weaken your immunity and they keep your nervous system in perpetual survival mode. You can literally you literally cannot access your creative thinking, much less your critical thinking, your deep connection, or your clear decision making when your body is convinced that you're under attack. Here's where gratitude comes in, not as a feeling, but as a deliberate neurological intervention. When you force yourself to identify the specific thing that you're grateful for, you activate the anterior cortex and parts of the prefrontal cortex in the process. These brain regions will help you regulate your emotional responses and they allow for more balanced perspective talking, discernment. It's like manually switching tracks on the train. The train wants to go down the victim track. It's well worn and downhill, but gratitude practice is you standing at the lever, forcing the train onto the other track. You do it enough times, and that new track becomes the path of least resistance. Most people think, I'll be grateful when I feel better. I'll be grateful when there's something to talk about. That's backwards. The research shows that you're going to feel better when you practice gratitude, whether you feel like it or not. As Robert Emmons, the world's leading scientific expert on gratitude, he puts it this way: it's an affirmation of goodness. We affirm that there are good things in the world, gifts and benefits that we've received. This doesn't mean that life is perfect. It doesn't ignore complaints or burdens or hassles. But when we look at life as a whole gratitude, it encourages us to identify some amount of goodness in our life. My friends, this is not spiritual bypassing or toxic positivity. It's neurological reprogramming. What happens if we don't develop this gratitude practice? If we choose to stay stuck in victim mode? Well, let's break it down physiologically. When you remain in that victim state, okay, your amygdala, your brain's fear center, it stays hyperactive. Studies using functional MRI have shown that a consistently active brain in this region, that amygdala, leads to reduced gray matter in the prefrontal cortex over time. This is way over my head, most of this, but it's just amazing when you consider this, what it's actually doing in the brain. Your brain is literally eating itself from the inside out. The damage isn't just neurological, it's systemic. Your body releases inflammatory hormones like TNF alpha and IL-6 when you're chronically stressed or perceiving yourself as a victim. These aren't just technical terms, they're the same inflammatory markers associated with chronic disease, accelerated aging, and even depression. One study from UCLA showed that people with high victim mentality scores had IL-6 levels 21% higher than those with resilient mindsets. Without intervention, this becomes a vicious cycle. You feel like a victim, which triggers inflammation, which makes you feel worse physically, which reinforces your feeling that life is unfair, which triggers more inflammation, and around we go. It's cyclical. Here's where it gets really insidious, okay? This cycle doesn't just make you feel bad. It makes you ineffective at solving the very problems that are causing your pain. Think about it. When your prefrontal cortex is compromised, you lose access to your executive function, your ability to plan, to see alternatives, to regulate your emotions. You're going to become more reactive, more impulsive, more likely to make decisions that create even more problems. I see this all the time in my clients going through a divorce. They get stuck in a victim loop. Their thinking gets cloudy. They make terrible financial decisions, or they say things to their ex that they can't take back, which creates more problems, which reinforces their victimhood. And suddenly they're 3 years into a divorce that should have taken 6 months. The stakes aren't just your emotional comfort, they're your physical health, your decision making ability, your relationships, your and ultimately your capacity to build a life worth living after that transition. Gratitude isn't optional, guys. It is survival. Let me tell you just a little bit of my own journey with gratitude, and it wasn't pretty. After my first divorce, I wasn't just heartbroken, I was identity broken. Everything that I thought defined me, husband, full time dad, provider, it was all shattered. And I did what most of us do. I dove headfirst into victimhood. I curated a mental museum of grievances I had to my ex. Every room showcased a different exhibit of how I'd been wronged. Okay. By my ex, by the legal system, by friends who didn't show up, by the universe. I rehearsed my victim story so often that I could recite it in my sleep. She left out of nowhere. The courts are biased. Nobody understands what I'm going through. I skipped shared events with my daughter out of spite, even though it meant that I was missing one of her moments. I drove by our old house just to torture myself. I doom scrolled social media at 2 a.m., looking for evidence that my ex was suffering too. My mornings started with a mental inventory of everything that I'd lost, and my evenings ended with bitter rumination of how unfair it all was again today. And during the day, I was irritable, foggy, exhausted, unfocused, distracted. My resting heart rate was through the roof. I caught every cold that came through town. I aged what felt like 10 years and looked like 15. I was convinced that my misery was completely justified, that it was happening to me rather than for me. Then came what I now call my grocery store breakdown. I was in the cereal aisle at Publix when another dad walked by with his two kids. They were laughing, they were planning Sunday breakfast. Something in me just broke. I abandoned the cart. I left it right there in the aisle. I barely made it back to my own car before breaking down in tears. And that night, I called my therapist and said something that I'd never admitted out loud before. I think I'm addicted to my pain, and I don't know how to stop. Her response, after what felt like a year of silence, it changed everything. She said this. She said, write one sentence of gratitude every day, even if you don't believe it, even if it feels like a lie. Just one sentence and then read it out loud. I laughed. Literally, I laughed at her on the phone. Gratitude? Are you kidding me? My life's in shambles and you want me to write about rainbows and butterflies? She didn't budge. One sentence every day, 30 days. If it doesn't work, we'll try something else. Okay, I started. It was reluctant, but the first week I did start and it felt ridiculous. I'm grateful my daughter still laughs sometimes. I'm grateful I have a car to sleep in. I'm grateful the judge didn't throw me in jail when I lost my temper. Basic, desperate stuff where I was. And it felt fake, like I was forcing myself to find the silver linings in this hurricane that was beating me down. But something shifted around day 14. I wrote, I'm grateful I got to rebuild my relationship with my brother after my divorce. It was the first entry that really felt genuinely true. And I noticed something. Writing it didn't feel like swallowing medicine anymore. It felt like acknowledging some reality. By day 30, I had to admit something was happening. My resting heart rate had dropped 8 points, 8 beats per minute. Tracking it by my Apple Watch, I was sleeping through the night for the first time in months. And most surprisingly, I created a new tradition for the time I did have with my daughter, something that would have been unthinkable a month earlier. Gratitude didn't fix my circumstance, it didn't change a detail about it. I was still divorced, I was still adjusting to part time fatherhood, still rebuilding financially, but it fixed my lens. It was like someone had wiped the dirt off my mental windshield, and suddenly I could navigate the road, even if it wasn't the road that I planned to travel. The most profound shift was that I stopped seeing myself as a victim of my divorce and started seeing myself as the architect of my response to it. Was it comfortable? Hell no, it was not. It was absolutely effective. Okay, so now let's explore three ways that gratitude rewires your mind and your body to break the victim cycle. All right. Way number one, gratitude physically quiets your fear response. When you're stuck in victim mode, your brain's fear center is hyperactive. Think of it like a car alarm that keeps going off in your head, even when there's no actual threat. This constant state of alarm floods your body with stress hormones, and it keeps you physiologically locked in a state of anxiety and vigilance. Functional MRI studies from Huberman's lab at Stanford, they've shown that consistent gratitude practice actually reduces activity in the amygdala and increases the connectivity in the prefrontal cortex. The area responsible for rational thinking and emotional regulation gets calmed instead of hyper. What's fascinating is how quickly this happens. In 2021 study published in Brain Behavior and Immunity, researchers found that women who engage in gratitude journaling often significantly lower this hyperactive activity of their brain just 2 weeks compared to the control group of 4 weeks. Their brains literally became less reactive to the threat and to negativity. Another groundbreaking study with heart failure patients demonstrated that those who practiced gratitude journaling showed measurably healthier heart rate variability within 8 weeks. Heart rate variability is a key indicator of your nervous system's flexibility and how well you can adapt to stress rather than being overwhelmed by it. Another example of this is your resting heart rate versus your cardio heart rate. If you can, run for 15 minutes and your heart rate goes up to 130, 140, 145, how quickly does it come down to resting? The quicker it can come down to resting is, an indication that it is healthier. If it takes you 2.5 hours, that's an indication there's something wrong. Here's the way this looked like in my own life. Before my gratitude practice, every email notification from my lawyer would send me into a panic spiral. My heart would race, my palms sweat. Uh, everything was catastrophized about, losing everything. It was the worst case scenario. After about 3 weeks of daily gratitude practice, I noticed something strange. Those same notifications still registered, but they didn't hijack my entire system anymore. I could open them, process the information, respond rationally rather than reactively. I remember one specific instance when my ex requested a change to our custody schedule, our parenting plan. Pre gratitude, this would have triggered a 3-day anxiety attack. Post gratitude, I was able to take deep breaths, evaluate whether the change worked for my schedule, and respond clearly without emotional flooding. My lawyer actually texted me afterward and she said, "Who is this and what have you done with my client?" This is the physiological foundation moving from victim to victor. When you fear responses, you you tense up. When your fear response is quieter, you can access the parts of your brain that solve problems rather than just react to them. All right, that's way one. Way number two, gratitude lowers inflammation like a drug. Here's where it gets really interesting, okay? Victim mentality isn't just a mindset, it's an inflammatory state. When you're constantly perceiving threats and injustices, your body releases pro inflammatory hormones like TNF alpha. And I'm not going to get into that because I don't know much of anything about it. But there are inflammatory markers associated with chronic disease, depression, anxiety, accelerated aging, even heart disease, autoimmune disease. In the same 2021 study I mentioned earlier, researchers found that participants who practiced gratitude showed significant reductions in both the TNF alpha and the IL-6 compared to the control group, meaning that the reduction was comparable to what you might see in an anti-inflammatory medication like naproxen or ibuprofen, but without the side effects. Let me put this in perspective here. When you practice gratitude, you're not just changing how you feel emotionally, you're changing your body's biochemistry. You're literally reducing the flame of inflammation that's burning through your tissues and your organs. One of my clients, Jennifer, was going through a brutal custody battle while simultaneously dealing with her autoimmune flare up. Her rheumatologist had actually increased her medication because her inflammation markers were so high. After implementing a daily gratitude practice along with her medical treatment, her next blood test showed a 17% reduction in these markers. Her doctor asked what she was doing, what had she changed in her lifestyle? And she just said, "I just started writing down 3 things that I'm grateful for every night." He was skeptical until she showed him the research. Now, he includes gratitude practice as part of his recommendations for patients with inflammatory conditions. I mean, think about the implications here. Victim mentality isn't just making you miserable emotionally. It's creating a physiological environment of inflammation that affects every system in your body. Gratitude doesn't just sound nice, it's medicine. And way number 3, gratitude builds resilience as a muscle memory. The third way gratitude defeats victimhood is by creating what I call a resilience muscle memory. Just like your body remembers how to ride a bike years after you've last done it, your brain can develop automatic patterns of resilience thinking through consistent gratitude practices. Research from Greater Good Science Center at UC Berkeley found that writing gratitude letters activates the anterior cingulate cortex, a brain region involving the emotional regulation and the cognitive flexibility. This area helps you reframe setbacks as challenges rather than threats. And over time, this creates what researchers will call a positivity bias in your memory. You literally become more likely to notice and remember and emphasize the positive aspects of your experience. This isn't denial or delusion, it's a recalibration of your attention. My client, Mark, a former CEO who'd been unexpectedly ousted from his company at 52 years old, described it perfectly. He said this: "Before gratitude practice, my brain was like a heat seeking missile for problems. I'd walk into the room and immediately spot what was wrong, what needed fixing, what might go bad. After 6 weeks of daily gratitude journaling, I noticed something odd. I was spontaneously noticing opportunities instead of just the threats. It wasn't forced. My brain was actually rewiring itself to its default setting. The Mark experienced What Mark experienced was development of resilience muscle memory. His brain had formed new neural pathways that automatically looked for possibilities rather than just the problems. This has profound implications for how you navigate a major life transition. When faced with setbacks, your brain has two ready made templates that it can go to. This is happening to me, the victim, or this is happening for me, the victor. Gratitude practice strengthens the victor template until it becomes your default setting. I experienced this myself about 6 months into my gratitude practice. I received a court order requiring me to pay additional support that would really seriously strain my finances. My initial reaction was still negative. I felt that familiar flush of anger and fear, but within minutes, not days or weeks this time, my brain automatically began generating constructive responses. This is temporary. I can pick up another consulting job. This is this is forcing me to get smarter about my finances. All of those types of things. No, none of them were easy, but they were positive. The shift from victim to problem solver happened without conscious effort. My brain had developed resilience muscle memory through consistent gratitude practices. Think about what becomes possible when your default setting is resilience instead of victimhood. You recover faster from setbacks. You see opportunities where others only see obstacles, and you maintain access to your full cognitive resources even under stress. This doesn't mean that you won't ever feel like a victim again. It means that you won't stay stuck there. And that makes all the difference in how your story unfolds. All right. So here is the bottom line. Gratitude isn't about ignoring pain. It's about refusing to let pain own you. When you practice gratitude as a deliberate action, you're not just changing your mindset, you're remodeling your brain, you're hacking your nervous system and rebuilding a body that is primed for resilience. The science is clear. Gratitude quiets your fear response, it lowers your inflammation, and it builds resilience muscle memory. It's not just nice, it's necessary if you want to move from stuck to unstoppable. Victimhood is passive, gratitude is a revolt. And the beautiful thing about it, you can start right now, regardless of your circumstances. Your transition may have happened to you, but your transformation belongs entirely to you. So here's my challenge. Try the 555 gratitude protocol for just 1 week. 5 minutes, five specific gratitudes, 5 days in a row. Don't wait until you feel grateful. Do it especially when you don't. That's when it's the most powerful. And notice what happens to your sleep quality, your problem solving ability, and your physical tension. The changes may be subtle at first, but they compound over time. You're not just feeling different emotions, you're building a different brain. So if today's live resonated with you, I want to encourage you to share this group with somebody in your life that you feel could use these messages. Don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube as well as TikTok or Instagram at This Bulletproof Life, Bulletproof Mindset which is my podcast on YouTube, and please share it. Let's help us grow this community so that we can continue to share this powerful message with other people. Before we wrap up, I do want to share a quick story that perfectly captures why I'm so passionate about this topic. Last month, I was attending my small group that I go to weekly and talking about gratitude. And a man approached me afterward. He was about 48, 50 years old, looked physically fit, but emotionally exhausted. And that combination I recognized all too well from my mirror days years ago. He basically was telling me his story. I lost my business, my marriage, my health within 18 months. And I've spent the last year perfectly documenting every injustice in a journal. And I can tell you exactly how I've been wrong down to the minute. Then he held up his phone. But what I've been doing lately is your gratitude exercise just for the past 2 weeks. And yesterday, for the first time in a year, I woke up and my first thought wasn't about everything that I've lost. It was about a client meeting I was actually looking forward to. That's the power of looking at gratitude as a weapon and not just a feeling. It doesn't erase your pain or invalidate your struggles. It simply ensures that you don't define your future. You don't have to define your future that way anymore. So, thanks so much for giving us your attention tonight. Your attention means a lot. I'm grateful you're here. If something from today's episode resonated with you, please share it. Share it with somebody that might be struggling after a life transition, that needs a little bit of gratitude in their life. Sometimes it's all it takes is one perspective to completely transform somebody's relationship with adversity. So until next time, remember, life doesn't get better by chance. It gets better by change. And gratitude is the change agent that we all have access to right now. Have a great weekend, everybody. Take care.